everybody! This time around I'm here to talk about The Just City by Jo Walton. Yeah, it's a book that's been out for a little while, but the publisher Tor recently started a monthly email book club. They give away free ebooks of, once a month a free ebook of one of their books, and this month it was that one. And since this one actually sounded interesting to me, I decided to read it. Last month, it was the first month for it, and I didn't actually read that one because it didn't sound like my kind of thing. But this month, it's more of a fantasy novel. Last month was science fiction, which I don't read as much of, and usually not hard science fiction when I do. Now, The Just City, like I said, it's more or less a fantasy novel, though there are some science fiction elements in it. Basically, the thing is, the premise is, what if a bunch of people throughout all time, well, not all the time, basically from, shortly after ancient Greece to, well, I guess from ancient Greece up until more or less today, have prayed to the goddess Athena to get a chance to create Plato's The Republic in the real world, and she decided to grant their wish. And that's pretty much the plot. There's also some robots in it because they're brought from the future to help work out on to do all the manual labor, basically, in the Republic. Now, I've never read the Republic. In fact, I don't even know if I've read any Plato or not. I might very well have read some in college as an assignment in some other book. But I don't think I've actually read anything of his, or not much of it anyway. So, I'm going to start off with my usual reading from the first chapter, which I will point out. This book is narrated in first person by 3 different characters. There's the god Apollo, and there's Samia, who is one of the children who's basically been taken to the Just City to be raised up to be one of the philosopher kings in the future. And there's Maya, who is one of the adults who had prayed to Athena and was traveled back in time to help set up the Just City. She is from the, I think, 19th century at some point. Anyway, this first chapter is narrated by Apollo. That would be the god Apollo, sun god, brother to Athena. Anyway, here it is.
She turned into a tree. It was a mystery. It must have been. Nothing else made sense, because I didn't understand it. I hate not understanding something. I put myself through all of this because I didn't understand why she turned into a tree. Why she chose to turn into a tree. Her name was Daphne, and so was the tree she became, my sacred laurel with which poets and victors crown themselves. I asked my sister Artemis first, "Why did you turn Daphne into a tree?" She just looked at me with her eyes full of moonlight. She's my full-blooded sister, which you'd think would count for something, but we couldn't be more different. She was ice cold, with one arched brow, reclining on a chilly silver moonscape.
She implored me. She wanted it so much, and you were right there. I had to do something drastic.
Her son would have been a hero, or even a god.
You really don't understand about virginity,
she said, uncurling and extending an ice-cold leg. Virginity is one of Artemis's big things, along with bows, hunting, and the moon. She hadn't made a vow of virginity. She hadn't dedicated herself to you. She wasn't a priestess. I would never.
You really are missing something. It might be Hera you should be talking to,
Artemis said, looking at me over her shoulder. Hera hates me. She hates both of us.
I know.
Artemis was poised now, ready to be off.
But what you don't understand falls within her domain. Ask Athena.
And she was off, like an arrow from a bow or a white deer from a covert, bounding across the dusty plains of the moon and swooping down somewhere in the only slightly less dusty plains of Scythia. She hasn't forgiven me for the moon missions being called the Apollo program when they should have been called after her.
yeah, I actually like that introduction in the story, setting up his motivations for why he's going to do what he's going to do, which is he's going to eventually to learn about human free will and equality and all that stuff. He's going to take human form and without any of his godly powers and live as a person in the just cities, starting as a child basically. And, he ends up becoming best friends with Samia, who is one of the other three main characters that I mentioned. And well, not one of the three. There are a lot of major characters. One of the three narrators. In fact, the major narrators are Samia and Maya, with Apollo just popping in occasionally. And, like I said, the basic plot is they founded Plato's Republic in the distant past. Basically, it's on an island that's about at some point in the future will be destroyed by a volcano. It's basically supposed to be Atlantis. The general plot was that the masters traveled back in time to set everything up ahead of time. Then they got a bunch of children. They basically decided to do it by buying children from slavers, which was one of the mistakes they made. It was presented as such, and you can see it's going to be a mistake early on, because basically traveling back in time and getting the slaves from the same slave port every year created a demand for slaves, which basically led to a lot of children being captured and their families murdered just so they could be sold to the masters, which basically caused some resentment in some of the children, which is one of the things you find out really quickly, and so it's not really a spoiler. So that's basically the plot, setting up the Just City. And basically about halfway through the book, Socrates shows up, because they didn't want him there in the beginning, because they knew he would cause trouble, but they wanted him there because he's Socrates. And he didn't want to be there, which just causes more trouble. This story isn't so much a story about a plot-driven thing at all. It's really character-driven and philosophy-driven, too. I mean, it's very, very much a story about philosophy and philosophical thinking. It was a lot of time people going, instead of beating the crap out of each other to solve their problems, they have debates and discussions. So this is definitely not a book for everybody, because it's definitely not something that's action-packed. But surprisingly, I really liked it. The only real complaint I had was the ending. I mean, basically the book just seemed to keep going on and on and on. I was looking at it and said, according to the Kindle, there's like 80% left, but we're not really anywhere near any sort of resolution. And basically, then just suddenly, wham, here comes an ending. I mean, it's a good ending. I mean, basically, it ends with a debate, which is an appropriate thing for a book that is so much about philosophy and debate and rhetoric and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely seemed to come out just ending. But of course, there is a sequel, and I guess another sequel that's either coming soon or recently released. I'm not sure. And see you. 4-star. Gasmask. Bye.
If you like this video, please click subscribe or watch some of my older videos. If you think the book I reviewed sounds interesting, buy a copy. There are always links to the Amazon store in the description for this book and any other books I mentioned. If you have any suggestions on other books I could read, or any other comments, queries, insults, or anything else you want to say, please feel free to mention it in the comments section.